Hey there everybody, and welcome back to the Correcting Common Posture Deviation series. For those of you tuning in for the first time, I'm Justin Archer, aka the Posture Guy, your #1 source on pain, posture, and performance. And today we're going to be discussing a combination of two posture deviations called thoracic offset with rotation, otherwise known as scoliosis. Now many people are familiar with what scoliosis is and what it looks like, but for those of you who may not be familiar with it, I'll briefly go over it. So when you look at someone head-on or from directly behind, their spine should line pretty much straight up and down. Well, with people with scoliosis, their spine, when you look at them head-on or from directly from behind, their spine is going to look more S or C-shaped. So it may look something like this. It may shift either to the right or the left. The left, they call it levo for left, levoscoliosis. To the right, they just call it scoliosis. And then a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times it's associated with some degree of rotation, either right to left or left to right. Okay, so this is what it may look like from the front, and this is what it looks like from the back, like so. Okay, so it's pretty easy to spot, and if you stand in front of a mirror, it's pretty easy to tell if you have scoliosis. Now, what I find most people are less familiar with is what actually causes scoliosis. And, I always, encourage my clients, and I encourage you to do the same, to, look it up. Whether it's through Google or Wikipedia or an anatomy book, because no matter what source you use, you're going to pretty much find almost verbatim the same definition, which is, and I sound like I'm repeating myself here, that's because I am, is it's a lateral curvature of the spine, usually associated with some degree of rotation. Okay, so when you see someone with scoliosis and you see that their spine is out of position, it has that lateral curvature, it has that rotation. I know the question I ask myself, and the question, you're probably asking yourself is, well, what put the spine in this position in the first place, and what's currently keeping it there? Well, the spine is a bone, correct? It's made up of vertebrae, so it's a segmented bone, but it's a bone. And the next question I ask is, well, what controls bones? As I'm sure you're pretty well aware, muscles control the movement of bones. So also when you look at someone with scoliosis, it's pretty safe to assume that a person who looks like this has an imbalance in their muscles. There's constantly a game of tug-of-war going on in your body between your right and your left halves of your body as far as which way your body leans or pulls to. And ideally you want a perfect stalemate. You don't want either side to win. But in the case of someone with scoliosis, like so, it's easy to tell, yeah, the right side of that person, those muscles are winning the battle, and muscles on the left are losing the battle, and vice versa, for someone who would lean the other way, okay? So there's a muscular imbalance going on here, and that leads to, the person's low-bearing joints, their shoulders, hips, knees, ankles, being out of alignment, as well as, the rest of their whole skeleton. So then the next question, the next logical question is, okay, so there's this muscular imbalance, I get that, and it's holding them out of position, but how did that imbalance, first occur? Well, I would say the majority of it is just a matter of form follows function. So for example, I used to have a certain amount of scoliosis, which in postural alignment therapy terms we refer to as that thoracic offset with rotation. And the big reason simply was because, I'm left-handed. I'm somewhat ambidextrous, but predominantly left-handed. So the things, the tools, the stuff that I interact with on a day-to-day basis, in the world, I reach for with my left side. So I'm constantly doing this. And I'm seldom doing this. So an imbalance occurred because I was constantly reaching for things with my left, and this in my body got stronger, and I would reach forward with things. So to the left and forward left leads to these muscles getting stronger and these muscles getting weaker. And that was simply it. Now, I didn't have to correct that. I didn't have to, switch from being left-handed to right-handed. I just needed to reintroduce some bilateral movement so that my right side would get a little bit stronger and my left side could loosen up and not take so much, brunt of the work of carrying my body upright. Now, some people may be saying, all right, that makes sense, Justin, and everything, but what about people who are born with scoliosis, congenital scoliosis? And I totally hear you, because there are people, and I've had clients who were born with scoliosis. First of all, that usually makes up about 15% of all, the population with scoliosis. And of that 15%, 10% can be improved upon. So I've had clients where they're born with scoliosis, and as a child, other than some physical limitations, it didn't really cause them any pain, but now maybe they're in their 30s, their 40s, and they're bent over to, say, such a degree, and they have back pain on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, of like an 8 or a 9. And they say, yeah, what can we do about this? In 2-3 weeks, after working together, they're from here to here, and their pain has gone from a 9 to a 2, and they're just, head over heels about that. Now, will we ever get them 100%, dead straight, like, a person who was born without scoliosis? Probably not, because that's not their original blueprint. But, I always ask people, does it matter that much to them, to that individual? If we can get them to the point where they're functional, where they can do everything that they want to do, and it doesn't cause them pain, or if it does, they know how to treat it themselves and immediately get out of it, are they okay with that? And I've never gotten no to that answer. People are always like, yes, I would be thrilled. And so I tell people, there's always something that could be done. Again, that congenital scoliosis demographic, is a small amount of people. Majority of it is just, again, created, form follows function, and it's the things that we do and how we move throughout the day and our motion patterns and habits. As far as, some people want to get really specific, what exact muscles, cause scoliosis. There's a lot of them. I mean, you got your QL, your internal external obliques, your latissimus dorsi, your rotators, multifidi. There's all kinds of muscles in there. But instead of, thinking so specific, zoom out a little bit. And what I do want to share with you is this. I have never seen a person with scoliosis who didn't also have a shoulder disparity. Think about that. I'll say it again. I've never seen a person with scoliosis who didn't also have a shoulder disparity. Now, what I mean by shoulder disparity is one shoulder was maybe higher than the other, or rolled forward more than the other. Maybe one shoulder blade was winged out more. So something was different left to right in their shoulders. And I started noticing that after, the first year or two of working with people and seeing more people with scoliosis. And it was just kind of, red flag and ding, and I noticed that. And here's the conclusion I've come to, is if you think your body as a ship, and your spine is the mast, and your shoulder blades are the sails, if one shoulder blade starts going out or up, just like a sail, it's going to, through muscular attachments, because there's muscles that go from your shoulder blade to your spine, it's going to start pulling your spine off its center axis to one side, and then start to rotate it, which again we refer to as scoliosis. And so what I found is that, if you can correct that disparity in the shoulders, I would say 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10, you can correct the scoliosis. So, now we're getting into, what everybody's here for, is how do you fix it? But before we get to the exercises, I do want to touch upon 2 things, because there's other ways that people try to correct scoliosis that I don't necessarily agree with. There is a time and place for them, but I think too often people go to these extreme fixes for something that could be easily fixed with a lot less trouble, a lot less hassle, a lot less pain, money, etc., etc. Okay, so common ways to fix scoliosis is bracing of the body. And the reason I'm not for bracing, with the exception of a broken bone and to cast it to protect it short term while the bone heals, so that'd be the only exception, is because prolonged casting, whether it's a hard cast or a soft cast, it's like an exoskeleton, and then the muscles surrounding whatever you're bracing start to atrophy. So whenever you're out of that cast, you're actually more prone to injury, because the muscles, you put a brace around, the muscles go, well shoot, this, brace something 3000, as amazing it is and how well engineered it is, shoot, we don't have to do anything. And the muscles just get lazy, they kind of go dormant, and so all it takes is, oh, I don't have my brace on for my scoliosis, and I lean over to reach this, and next thing I know, oh, I herniated disc, or I pull a muscle in my back. So, again, bracing, not such a great idea. I have seen them help, but then they're usually associated with some type of injury following it. The other one, which I'm very strongly against unless it's in extreme situations, is surgery. You might have heard about these before, where they actually put rods, metal rods, along your spine, along with even metal wires to help correct the curvature of your spine. And the reason I have a problem with this, and again I'll say the time when it can be used, or I think it should be used, is if someone has extreme curvature, then extreme amount of pain, they've tried everything else, and that's like the last straw. Okay, by all means have the surgery, and I have seen it help. Okay, so it's not all bad. But a lot of times I've seen people, and it usually is teenage girls who have, developed scoliosis, transitioning from being a young woman into, an adult woman, who they've developed this scoliosis, and their parents are talking about having this surgery. And I don't know if you know what goes into this surgery, but depending on the severity of the curvature, they'll have to either go in from the front and move aside all your major internal organs, or go through the back and cut around a lot of nerves that are very, very important for things like walking, or in very extreme conditions, go through the back, flip it around, and then go through the front again. I've actually read procedural reports for surgeons on how you do this. I didn't even have breakfast that morning, and I almost threw up. It is just, if you've ever seen Braveheart, at the end of the movie where they cut him open and he's yelling, "Freedom!" That's kind of like the surgery they do. They do make it nicer, don't get me wrong. But, I mean, it is just terrible how much they have to do for this procedure. And here's the crazy part, is a lot of these, teenage girls that I talk to, and I say, okay, you and your parents are thinking about maybe having this surgery. Well, let me ask, are you even in really that much pain? And a lot of them are like, no. On a scale from 1 to 10, they're like, oh, 1 or 2. But also that's following, maybe they're on a volleyball team or a softball team and they're playing sports, and I'll have them maybe do 5-10 minutes of exercise and say, yeah, I feel better. I go, so you're going to think about having this very, very invasive surgery that if it goes wrong, you can die on the table. And let's be honest, when you're cutting through that much material, moving organs, cutting around major arteries and spines, there's a higher chance of a fatality. You're thinking of having that rather than, what, spending 10-15 minutes doing exercise a day? It just doesn't make sense, Again, if you're in dire pain and you've tried everything else, by all means look at the surgery. I have seen it help. But what I recommend, and what I've included down below this video, is a set of exercises. There's really only 4 of them. You should be able to go through them in 10 minutes or less. What these exercises are going to do is going to help correct that shoulder disparity that I said is kind of a common denominator amongst all of the people I've seen with scoliosis, as well as go after a lot of the other muscles surrounding the trunk and the core and the low back, and as well as the hips. So it's going to help correct your posture, the cause, that muscular imbalance, so the scoliosis can go from something like this to like this. So being that it's a pretty short routine, again, it should only take 10 minutes, you can do this actually multiple times per day. I would just kind of put it on a sliding scale. The worse your curvature, so if you have a greater degree of lateral curvature, the more times you should do it per day. Granted, there is a point of less returns, so I would say no more than 3 times per day. But try it once and see how you feel. If you need a little bit more, do it twice. Again, 3 times being the most you do it. And what I'm interested in is before you do the exercises, if you have any symptoms, mark that down, either remember them or write them down. But here's what I'd really like to hear from you is do a balance test, okay? Because as much as I want you to feel better, what I know is that if we can improve your balance, even if you don't feel better the very first time doing the exercises, as your balance improves, as you go from this, where I go, wow, all my weight's on my right side, to this, your body's going to have no choice but to feel better, okay? So before you do the exercises, close your eyes and ask yourself, where do you feel the weight in your feet? Is it more on your left foot or your right foot? Towards your toes or towards your heels? Towards the inside edge of the feet or the outside edge of the feet? And jot those down, and then go through the exercises and do that test again afterwards, and let me know how you feel, all right? You can leave those answers down below in the comment section, or you can email me them, call me, messenger bird, whatever, all right? Anyways, thank you for joining me inside today's video. I look forward to seeing you inside the next one. Until then, take care and keep moving.